Welcome to Echoes of Enlightenment, where we talk about spirituality, life lessons, and overall self-development. In today's episode, we'll be talking about targeted harassment. Earlier today, I went for a jog around this lake that has a nice trail around it to get some exercise and some sun. And as I was jogging, just a thought popped into my mind, and it was like, why are some people, they seem perfectly fine, living their life, good people, just living their life, doing good. Then all of a sudden, there's like a mental issue going on, or they're falling off, or they turn to drugs, or even end up homeless and on drugs. But not that long ago, they were perfectly fine. Like, how does that happen? Like, how does that switch in a snap of a finger? How does it flip like that? And then some people will be like, oh, it was the crowd they were hanging around with, or they turned to drugs, that's why they winded up homeless, or this mental illness that they had, or something like that was just lying dormant, and it just came out and they just started, acting different than what you're used to them. And I thought about that. And okay, let's say, yes, some of that stuff is true. Some of that stuff could be true. But I think a lot of that stuff can be triggered. I think a lot of that stuff, people going, turning to drugs, or, ending up like homeless, or having a mental illness. I think some of this stuff can be triggered. I don't think everybody who's in these situations are just in those situations just by the reasons, the common reasons people come up with. I would think a lot of people that are in those situations are placed there due to targeted harassment. And nobody even mentions that. It's always like drugs. And then once they're in in that situation, whatever the person says from that situation, from the on drugs, mental illness, or homeless, you're not going to take serious anymore anyways, just from the situation that they're in right now. It's like they lose all credibility. If they tried to explain, you wouldn't believe them, because you're like, nah, I'm not taking you serious. Look at you. But you don't understand how people can wind up in that situation. If you're targeted like by a narcissist, and people don't really understand how severe, I'm sure a lot of people do, especially the ones that's been through it and going through it. I've been through it and still, go through it, dealing with the narcissist. It's the most insane thing. It's, you get the targeted harassment. So somebody who could be doing perfectly fine, and they begin getting targeted by a narcissist, or just, somebody who's targeting you, in that category. When I say targeted, I mean the whole smear campaign, the flying monkeys that get people, the whole thing. And what that is, the people that are doing the targeting are trying to overload the person. Their goal is to overload. It's like they know what they're doing. They know what steps to take to send somebody, to the streets, or having them turn to drugs, or even, some people even taking themselves out. And that's another one I guess I didn't add in. People taking themselves out. You're like, their life was fine, and all of a sudden they just took themselves out. No, you got to realize this targeted harassment is a lot more common than you know. And the reason why it's so The reason why you don't see it often is because it's all done behind closed doors. It's done under the cover of night. It's in the background. The only person who really knows about them getting targeted is the person that's getting targeted. And of course, the person who's, doing the targeting, who's applying the pressure. And also the people that they gather up to do this harassment. So what they'll do to this person, they'll do to their target, is they'll overload them. And what I mean by overload them, they'll affect the way they make money. They'll try to disable every possible way this person can make money. They'll run a smear campaign. This is to destroy any support that the person has. And it's almost like the people that are doing the targeting, or the person or the group or the family, whatever it is, it's almost like they have like a list, like a checklist. They're like, all right, let's run phase 1. And then that's the smear campaign. They run that. So they ruin your reputation to everybody. And when I say everybody, it's more people than you even know. And what I mean by more people than you know, I'm talking about if you know 50 people personally, they've smeared you to like 500. And these are people you don't know, people that you haven't seen since kindergarten. So that's like phase 1. And then while you're on that, you're like trying to figure out what's going on. They go, all right, phase 2. Then they'll get you like fired from your job. They get you fired from your job. And you're like, oh man, what's going on? So you're already bombarded from your reputation being destroyed. And then now it's on to your employment, how you're able to eat and live. We all need jobs, right? It's all important. I mean, it's important. But they'll destroy that. And then they're like, all right, well, let's go on to phase 3. Then they'll like drive by your house. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're like even pay people to do stuff too. To harass, to add on to the harassment. So they're just compiling all these different things onto people. And it's like it'll be an overload. And you got to think about it. One of those things I just named 3 so far. One of those things is a lot. Imagine when you go to a restaurant or something, or you go through a drive-through and you're upset because they got your order wrong. So you jump on the phone to want to vent to one of your friends about your order. There's your crutch right there. There's most people's crutch that, be able to call somebody, reach out when you want to talk or something's on your chest or any of that. Imagine if they've disabled every one of your friends by telling some crazy lie. No telling what the lie would be. It'll be enough to where your friends won't talk to you, and they also won't approach you to even ask you if the lie is true. That's how crazy the lie is. A normal person can't think of something that bad. So that's what a mind boggles. So that's already bad enough right there. That'll mind boggle you right there. You're like, what the? Now imagine after that, they disable your job. That's already 2 things. Each one of those separately is too much for one person to handle. And most of the time when any one of those situations happen, you're like, okay, well, let me reach out to my family. You're trying to reach out to your family. They've disabled that too. So now you don't have a job, and they've disabled your group, your stability, your friends, your family, anybody that, you could normally call to talk to, they disabled that. This is all done. This is a strategy. It has to be like some kind of special pamphlet these people have, because they know exactly what to do. And then they, just the harassment. So when you're getting all that placed on you and there's nowhere to turn and it's too much pressure on you, what do you think happens next? Where there's nobody to be like, hey, do you know anybody who has a job? You're like trying to do all this stuff to reach out, but everywhere you reach has been disabled. They've gotten to your whole surrounding. And the reason why they've gotten to your whole surrounding is because you had no clue that it was happening anyways. It's been going on way longer than you even noticed. They just had to pull the plug and just move on to their different phases of destruction, of destroying the individual's life. So as all these different phases keeps going, because it's so many things, like you can't even believe how many avenues of harassment they have, and all of them are big things. Like they're like vandalize your car, but not bad enough to where you can really call the cops. All this stuff is kind of done in the background to where only you know. And if you even try to go and tell somebody, that's covered too. They've already covered that because they already have the group that has their back. And it all just be pointed at you, because this is a whole thing. This whole like process is like it's an evil process that's going on, and it's out of this world. And what I'm saying right now, you're probably like, that's not real. No, it's real. It's real. So when you do all that stuff to these people, and you've cut out their working, if a normal person is used to living a normal life, and this, oh yeah, let me tell you, this stuff goes on. It'll go on for years. Like they're locked in on you. Years that apply the pressure more and more and more, and just keep it going. You know, it'll be no telling how many people they have working with them, but they keep it going for years, really, until you break. They want you. It's either you break or they get busted for what they're doing. It's one of the two. Well, yeah, it's one of the two. But you just gotta stay strong. That's why I do this whole podcast about making sure you're becoming the best version of yourself, because you got to have a bunch of self-love. You got to be confident. You got to be strong to withstand mentally and even physically, because they both go together. You have to be the best, strongest version of yourself to be able to maintain this, because it's out of this world. I mean, think about it. If something can make you turn to some hard drugs to where you're out on the street, or it makes you go straight to the street, chances are you might wind up on drugs then, because you never thought you would be on the street. Or you take, yourself out, because that's too much pressure. And that's what they want. And that's the crazy part, is that somebody wants this for you. And it's not even just one person that can do all this. They need a group. Because I'm sure it's a lot one person could apply a good amount of pressure, but to really get the job done, they need other people. And some of these people are willing, participants in the destruction. And then some people are getting manipulated themselves into helping this person destroy you. They don't really, know what's going on. But at some point they'll realize, you should wake up and be like, oh, I've been harassing this person I don't even know for 2 years now, or 3 years, 7 years, whatever it is. And if they've done it that long, then they know exactly what they're doing. And they want to see something bad happen too. I mean, it's what it is. It is what it is. So if this is happening to a person and they were normal for a while, because like I said, you would be like, well, why didn't they say anything to anybody? They probably wanted to say something, but you got to remember, everything around them has been disabled, has been torn down, all of their relationships through the smear campaign. You got to think about it. If there's somebody that you hearing some nonsense about and you've never seen them do it, you should check on them and just be like, hey, man, I heard this, or hey, friend, I heard this. Is this true? Don't just believe exactly what you heard and then go off. Because think about that. Everybody else is doing the exact same thing. And now this one person is stuck. Can't even defend themselves. The one, there's nobody to even defend themselves to. And more you try to defend yourself, if you do get a chance to explain what's going on, it's so bizarre and odd to try to explain to where no one would believe you. Just like me explaining this stuff to you right now, chances are you're like, what is he talking about? This stuff ain't real. That's what it sounds like. That would be them trying to explain what's going on to somebody. It sounds like what I'm explaining to you. It's so bizarre. It doesn't even seem real because and it goes on because it still goes on unnoticed because it's so quietly done. It's a master plan of evil being done to somebody. You have to withstand it. You have to withstand it. That's the only way you can make it through. And the only way you can make it through is to know exactly who you are. That's why I say go inward and heal from traumas, because you're not going to be able to win this battle with a bunch of past trauma from just your life and then bombard it with everything that the narcissist or, the people that are targeting you are throwing at you. You can't handle all that. That's why people will end up on the streets, drugs, with the mental illness, or even, taking themselves out because they don't see a way out of it. So when you see some people on the street, like, different homeless people, or you might see somebody walking down the street talking to themselves or something like that, don't instantly go to, they're on drugs, they just gave up on life. No, man, I'm sure there's a lot of people that's out there that have been through this targeted harassment and they didn't make it through it. I mean, it's good they're still alive. There's a lot of people that aren't alive that couldn't handle it, because it's a tough journey to go through, because it lasts for a long time. Like I said, it's either you crash out or something happens to them. What I mean happens to them is, like karma catches up, or they've set so many traps and done so much stuff to where they start falling into those traps. And then it can end like that, but it's a severe ending one way or another for them or for you. So when you see, like, you hear about somebody like, oh, they were all right, they were good, and they just, I didn't know that they were dealing with depression, or I didn't know they were dealing with mental illness. Well, they didn't have the regular mental, illness. It was like, it was created through constant trauma. It was created through constant trauma of the harassment, like people driving by your house. Like what you see on some of those crazy movies, like Single White Female, or any of those movies that is just that crazy person, like, oh man, that person's crazy. Or like on some of those shows on the ID channel, like You Don't Know Who You Married, and all that type of stuff. That stuff really happens. And a lot of it goes, the stuff that you see on the TV is like, oh, okay, dang, that's crazy. But there's a lot that goes undercover to where you don't see it. And all you know is somebody you knew just ended up on some kind of crazy drugs, or, ended up homeless. And you're like, how did this happen? Then people will write it off. Oh, they were on this. Oh, this happened. But not knowing what was going on in the background with the whole targeted thing. So when you see people on the street, don't assume that everybody's just going straight to drugs or they made a bunch of bad decisions. Some of these people that are out there, life was intentionally destroyed by another person. And that's why they're there. And then when they do want to talk out to them, chances are most people won't even talk to, some homeless people that are just on the road. Maybe like, hey man, how you doing? You all right? Hand them some water, hand them some stuff. if, people even do that much, not knowing that this was a perfectly vibrant person whose life was destroyed by a narcissist. Most of the time it's a narcissist. Somebody in that category where they lock on and they run out. It's a whole thing. You could look it up on, I even have a couple of episodes about narcissism on here, but it's all over, it's on YouTube. It's good that the awareness is happening now, that more people are like learning about this stuff. Because before, nobody knew what the hell was going on. But now it's like the narcissist will run a whole playbook. So it's good to know the playbook before they start running it. Because if you don't know anything about narcissism, that it even exists, there's a good chance you're going to wind up in one of those categories. Because it's a demonic act that they're doing on you. And if you're not demonic, then chances are it's going to destroy you. Because one, you can't think like that. Some of this evil stuff that they do, it will just, if you think about it, it'll start giving you a headache. Because you're like, what? Oh my, you can't believe it. And then they throw like something else, then something else. And all of these are the most evil things. And if you get overloaded with too much insanity, then that's when you start, losing yourself. That's when the mental illness will creep in, or you need to cope with something. So now you're turning in, hey, do you have a couple of pills or whatever it is? You start trying to cope with it through substances. And then once you're on that, then, sometimes you go downhill and then you start losing everything else that you have left. Because most of the stuff that you'll lose will be lost because of the person targeting you, taking away all of your stability. And I know this sounds outrageous, and it is. And it's absolutely insane. But just think about how you view people. Try to have some compassion, because you don't know what these people went through to wind up where they are. And yes, there could be some people that just made some bad choices, just ended up there. But I'm sure that there's a lot of people that were targeted and pushed into one of those situations. Especially if you know somebody, you're like, they would never do that. They would never. How did this happen? I mean, I can't believe it. Somebody has targeted them, and then they ended up where they are. And then once they're where they are, it's hard for people to believe what they're saying from the standpoint that they're at. And if they're mentally ill by that time, you're going to disregard it, and you're going to be like, oh, that's crazy talk. Because it sounds like crazy talk. Because it's not known. Not many people know about this stuff. Look up narcissism, or even go to YouTube and look up people that's gone through narcissism, crazy stories. I'm sure something will pop up when you just type in a crazy story, just because it's so bizarre. And the only way you really can resonate with it is if you kind of been through it. But when you listen to it, you'll be like, oh, dang, this stuff really happens. So it's good for you just to at least know it exists and the severity of it. It'll blow your mind. But it's good to know, because if something bizarre starts happening, like somebody's calling your job, or, you can't figure out why every job you get, you keep losing it, or, just different situations, or something's happening to your car. Instead of going crazy trying to figure that out, you'll be like, oh, I wonder if a narcissist, I could be a victim of something, or I could be getting targeted for something. And at least to look it up, and then that's how you're able to manage it as much as you can. And that's, I've been through this stuff. That's why I do this podcast, because what I'm trying to do is make a trail, bring some of awareness on how to deal with these people when you spot them. That's why I have a lot of these episodes talking about how to deal with some of this stuff that goes on, because I mean, I made it through it. I made it through it. That's what I'm gonna say. And I want to, keep moving forward and keep bringing information just so people will have some kind of knowledge in case it ever happens to them. Then I also want to just speak for some of the people that didn't make it, some of the people that have like hit all the way, to the bottom, like the homeless, maybe taking themselves out or on some, drugs or some kind of mental illness because of this. And they can't really, speak for themselves because it's too outrageous for anybody to believe. So that's why I'm kind of wanting to talk about this today. But I'm going to end this right here. Until next time.